Good morning, Chad. Good morning, all.
Good morning, Yochai, and good morning to all our fabulous listeners out there. Welcome to today's episode of Morning Brew with Chad, me, and you. I'm your co-host, Chad, coming to you live and cozy on this fantastic National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day. We've got a great show lined up, diving into the comfy and sometimes comedic world of pajamas in the workplace. So whether you're sipping your morning coffee in flannel or silk, stay tuned as we explore how a little soft fabric can make a big impact on our work lives. Let's get started.
Absolutely, Chad. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't know the history of PJs. I grew up with long johns, and when I think of PJs, I think of like Charles Engel's 1800s, back flap and all.
Ah, the classic long johns and the legendary back flap. Those really take us back, don't they? Pajamas have such a rich history that spans continents and centuries. Originally, pajamas came from South Asia, adopted by British colonists in the 1800s from the traditional garments worn there. They were a symbol of leisure and comfort that quickly caught on back home in Europe. And yes, the iconic back flap, or as some might fondly call it, the access hatch, definitely made those chilly nights a bit more can reflect so much about the times and cultures. Today, they're not just
Hey, shit. Hey, Chad, I'm so sorry. We got interrupted by a phone call. I forgot to shut everything off and block all calls. Can we take it from when you said let's get started? I put a break in there. We'll try to using like a little interstitial, and then let's start from that whole let's get started. And I'm just going to go from there. So give me that whole let's get started again.
let's get started. Ready when you are, Yochai. Let's make this a great one.
Well, I'll tell you this, Chad. I think of PJs. I think immediately of Long Johns and Charles Engel's kind of that whole get up that he had with the back flap. I don't know if you know that. That was like around the 1800s, but that's more of like the Americana. I mean, where do we even get PJs from?
That's a great point to jump off from, Yochai. The history of pajamas is as layered as the garments themselves. Originally, the concept of pajamas comes from the Persian word payjama, meaning leg garment, and was adopted into the English language during British colonial rule in South Asia. They were essentially loose pants tied at the waist, worn by both men and women in regions of India, and they represented a comfortable alternative to the more restrictive clothing of the West. When we talk about the kind of pajamas you mentioned, the ones with the back flap, often called union suits in America, they were indeed a bit of a different evolution. These were one-piece garments that buttoned up the front and typically had a back flap to help with those chilly nights in the 1800s. Practicality at its best, right? So from the Silk Routes of Asia to the gold rushes of America, pajamas have traveled not just geographically, but through social classes and cultures, transforming into what we now consider both sleepwear and even workwear for some. It's interesting to see how a simple concept of comfort from one part of the world evolved into a nearly universal symbol of relaxation, and now even productivity in relaxed work environments.
Absolutely, Chad. I mean, look, given that historical context, we can't help but bring up British colonialism without kind of like, oh, going a little groany on that one. So it's always interesting to me that the West adopted pajamas really through their imperialism of the East.
You're absolutely right, Yochai. The adoption of pajamas in Western culture is a clear example of how colonialism influenced fashion and lifestyle choices that were, in a way, both a cultural exchange and a cultural imposition. This intertwining of comfort and colonial history can indeed make us a bit uneasy when we think about the origins and the paths these influences took. It's fascinating and sometimes a bit troubling to reflect on how much of what we consider normal today has roots in historical events and movements that were far from benign. The adoption of pajamas is just one instance where we see a practical and popular item of clothing spreading across the world under the umbrella of empire. This mismix of history shows us the complexity of cultural interactions. It's not just about adopting a garment, but also about understanding and acknowledging where it came from and the circumstances that brought it into mainstream culture. Discussing these aspects helps us appreciate the full story and promotes a more nuanced view of history and culture. Let's keep exploring these themes and see what other insights we can uncover.
Absolutely, Chad, but let's also keep those answers snappy. Look, I mean, there's clearly a cultural difference, and we're dealing with imperialism, and so there's a little bit of a snooty caste system turned up, like nose turned upward kind of idea. How did the traders manage to sell the idea of pajamas, an Eastern cultural aspect, to Western everyday people?
Great question, Yokai, and I'll keep it crisp. The traders and colonial officers really had to get creative to make pajamas appealing back west. They played up the exoticness and comfort of the Eastern garments, pitching them as the pinnacle of leisure and luxury, a way to bring a piece of the mysterious East into everyday life in Europe and America. They marketed pajamas not just as clothing, but as an experience and a lifestyle, something that could offer a break from the stiff formalities of Western dress codes. By associating them with relaxation and exotic leisure, they tapped into a desire for novelty and comfort that was just beginning to emerge among the middle and upper classes who were looking for new ways to express their status and sophistication. This strategy of exotic appeal combined with practical comfort helped pajamas transition from colonial imports to mainstream staples in the wardrobes of the Western middle class. It's a classic example of how fashion can cross cultural boundaries, bringing with it a mix of innovation and complexity.
Well, speaking of complexity, I assume that such transitions didn't go without troubled waters. I mean, were there any controversies, any kind of naysayers to this infiltration of costumed culture from the East?
Indeed, the introduction of pajamas into Western culture wasn't without its bumps. As with any cultural import, there were controversies and resistance from various quarters. First off, there were definitely naysayers who viewed pajamas as too foreign or too relaxed for proper decorum. In the early 1900s, wearing what was essentially seen as foreign nightwear outside of one's bedroom or house was quite scandalous, especially for women. The idea of adopting a style of dress that blurred the lines between private and public attire was met with skepticism and sometimes outright disapproval. Additionally, there were critics who saw the adoption of such garments as a form of cultural appropriation or as a symbol of the West's domination over Eastern cultures, a kind of sartorial imperialism, if you will.
Yeah.
This criticism was part of a larger discourse about the ethics of colonialism and the consumption of foreign products that were disassociated from their origins and the context in which they were traditionally used. Despite these controversies, pajamas gradually became popular as their comfort and practicality won over the public. This shift was helped along by fashion designers who adapted the styles to suit Western tastes and by changing social norms that gradually embraced more casual and diverse clothing options. The dialogue around these changes certainly helped pave the way for more inclusive and varied fashion landscapes that we see today.
Well, absolutely, Chad. I mean, look, it takes some fashionistas, educated people in that industry, I guess, to repackage something in a way that is more digestible for Western audiences as opposed to the Eastern. I mean, besides the fact that we even call it Western and Eastern, is just arbitrary as to who picked what first. But don't get me down that rabbit hole. But I mean, look, you talked about the fact that outside of one's bedroom, it was scandalous, especially for women back then. What is it? When did it start changing? I mean, what are those factors? Was it just the fashion rebranding and remarketing that led up to being a fashion item beyond the bedroom? I mean, how did this evolution happen? I mean, are there pinnacle points?
Absolutely. The evolution of pajamas from strictly private attire to a more accepted part of everyday wear is a fascinating story that reflects broader social changes, particularly in attitudes towards fashion, gender norms, and privacy. Key factors in the evolution. One, fashion innovators and icons. The transformation was significantly influenced by fashion designers and icons who took bold steps to redefine what was acceptable. In the 1920s, designers like Coco Chanel introduced luxurious silk pajamas as stylish beach and leisure wear for women, which was quite revolutionary. These garments began to be seen not just as functional, but as fashionable and avant-garde. Icons like Paul Poiret also contributed by designing exotic loungewear that was meant to be seen, helping to blur the traditional boundaries between private and public attire. Two, cultural shifts. The Roaring Twenties were a time of significant social change, with more liberal attitudes towards women's roles and clothing. As women gained more social freedoms, including the right to vote, there was a parallel movement towards more comfortable and less restrictive clothing that allowed greater freedom of movement and expression. This period also saw a rise in leisure culture, with people having more time for beaches, spas, and resorts, where relaxed dress codes were more acceptable and even expected. Three, media influence. The proliferation of movies and magazines also played a crucial role. As film stars began to be photographed in casual and stylish pajamas, these images helped change public perceptions about what was appropriate to wear and when. The glamorization of pajamas by Hollywood gave them a trendy and desirable aura. Four, economic factors. The Great Depression and subsequent economic shifts made affordability a priority for many. Pajamas, which could be stylish yet not overly expensive, became a practical choice for wear both in and out of the home. This economic pragmatism helped to normalize the use of pajamas as day wear and not just sleepwear. Five, World War II. During the war, practicality in clothing became even more crucial. Pajamas were easy to produce and comfortable for wearing during air raids when people might have to stay in shelters overnight. This utilitarian use further helped to make pajamas a normal part of the public wardrobe. By the mid-20th century, pajamas had largely overcome their scandalous reputations and were well on their way to becoming a staple of casual wear. This trajectory wasn't just about changing fashion, but also about shifting societal norms and the ongoing redefinition of public and private spaces and behaviors.
Well, I mean, look, Chad, I mean, that's amazing because, I never thought that pajamas would be this thing that is just causes such a stir, led up to, breaking social norms and the controversies of that. I mean, well, so how do we get from the mid 20th century to pajama, what is it, the pajama day observance that we have, which is it's a day after tax day. And I had to double, you told me about this and we had to double check that. I thought this was a fake one.
You've got it, Yokai. The journey of pajamas through the 20th century to becoming a symbol for a fun observance like National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day really encapsulates how deeply fashion is intertwined with cultural and social developments. The emergence of National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day. One, post-tax day relaxation. Indeed, National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day is typically observed on April 16th, the day after tax day in the United States. The idea here is pretty symbolic and quite clever. After the stress of filing taxes, what could be better than kicking back in your most comfortable attire? It's a way to decompress and add a bit of levity after a day that many dread. Two, growing casualness in workplace attire. The rise of more casual work environments in the late 20th and early 21st centuries played a huge role in this. Companies started to embrace casual Fridays and other forms of relaxed dress codes to boost morale and break down the hierarchical stiffness often associated with traditional business attire. This gradual shift made the idea of wearing pajamas to work once a year a fun and acceptable extension of these new norms, especially in creative or tech industries where workplace cultures were rapidly evolving. Pop culture influence. Pop culture continued to celebrate and normalize the idea of pajamas as acceptable public attire through various media. TV shows, films, and influencers showing characters or themselves wearing pajamas in more public or semi-professional contexts helped cement this idea as both humorous and permissible. Four, social media and viral trends. The advent of social media has also played a pivotal role. As people began sharing photos of themselves wearing pajamas in unusual or traditionally formal settings, What might have started as a quirky idea gained traction as a broader social trend. Social media campaigns could quickly transform what was a novelty into a widely recognized event. 5, recognition and relatability. Finally, there's a universal relatability to the comfort of pajamas that transcends cultural boundaries. The observance taps into a common desire to rebel against the conventional, if only for a day, and to embrace comfort and personal expression in the workplace. So, from a practical sleepwear option to a symbol of breaking the mold and injecting fun into the workplace, pajamas have indeed made a remarkable journey. It's a testament to how everyday items can evolve into symbols with significant cultural resonance. And yes, while it might seem like a fake holiday to some, it's taken quite seriously by others as a legitimate way to celebrate comfort and shake up the norm.
Well, I would have thought that it would have gotten more devotees during the times of the lockdowns where everybody was confined to their house and working remotely. I'm wondering if there was a rise in popularity as a result of those years.
Absolutely, Yochai, you're spot on with that observation. The COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting lockdowns indeed played a significant role in boosting the popularity of wearing pajamas during work hours, among other casual attire. Impact of lockdowns on pajama popularity. One, remote work surge. With millions of people worldwide suddenly transitioning to remote work, the norms around workplace attire underwent a swift and substantial transformation. For many, this shift meant that comfort took precedence over traditional office wear, since they were no longer in a formal office environment. 2, the Zoom effect. The rise of video conferencing tools like Zoom brought about a new cultural phenomenon where only the upper half of one's attire needed to be presentable. This led to the humorous yet practical trend of business on top, like a nice shirt, and party on the bottom, pajama pants, sweatpants, which many people embraced and even shared widely on social media. People began posting pictures and sharing stories about their work from home outfits, which often included pajamas. This visibility helped normalize the practice and even made it trendy. 4, mental health and comfort focus. The pandemic also brought a renewed focus on mental health and the importance of comfort at home, especially as people grappled with the isolation and stress of lockdowns. Pajamas and other comfortable wear became a symbol of self-care and prioritizing personal well-being during a difficult time. 5, increased sales and market trends. Retail trends during the pandemic showed a marked increase in the sale of loungewear, including pajamas. Many clothing brands reported higher sales in their loungewear lines as people sought to upgrade their comfort at home, which further reflects this shift in consumer behavior. These factors combine to not only increase the popularity of pajamas during the workday, but also potentially to solidify National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day as a more recognized and eagerly anticipated observance post-pandemic. It's a clear example of how societal changes can accelerate shifts in cultural practices and holiday observances, making them more relevant to a wider audience.
Chad, that was beautiful, but let's not lecture our listeners. Let's keep everybody just, it's the morning show. Let's not put them to sleep. Look, I mean, are there any downsides? Are there any potential downsides to this kind of relaxed dress code? I know that sometimes companies do casual Fridays, but I mean, is everything? I mean, is there any downside?
Absolutely, Yochai. Let's keep it light and engaging. While the relaxed dress code like Pajama Day has its perks, it's not without potential pitfalls. Here are a couple of points to consider. 1, blurring the line between work and home. When pajamas or overly casual wear become the norm, it can sometimes blur the boundaries between home time and work time. This might make it harder for some people to switch off from work mode, potentially leading to longer hours and a higher risk of burnout. 2, professionalism and perception. There's also the aspect of professionalism. Depending on the industry, clients or colleagues might perceive a too casual approach as a lack of seriousness or commitment. Maintaining a professional image is crucial in many fields, and what you wear can definitely influence perceptions. 3, impact on productivity. For some, getting dressed in more formal work attire can be an important psychological cue that it's time to focus and be productive. There's a risk that too casual an outfit could lessen this mental shift into work gear, potentially impacting productivity. 4, workplace dynamics. Finally, while many might find comfort in casual clothes, others might feel it encourages a too lax environment that could lead to decreased decorum in professional interactions, which might affect teamwork and communication dynamics. So while there are plenty of benefits to a relaxed dress code, it's all about finding the right balance that maintains comfort without sacrificing the professionalism and productivity that comes with a more traditional workplace setting.
No, I'll tell you something. I mean, like I said, I didn't know it was a thing until you told me it was a thing. What are your closing thoughts?
Well, Yokai, wrapping up today's chat on National Wear Your Pajamas to Work Day, yes, it's definitely a thing, and it's a fun one at that. Here are a few takeaway points. 1, culture and comfort. We've explored how pajamas have traveled from east to west, breaking barriers and reshaping norms. What started as a comfortable home garment has made its way into the workplace, challenging our traditional views on professional attire. 2, balance is key. As much fun as it is to shake up the dress code, maintaining a balance is crucial. It's important to ensure that comfort doesn't compromise professionalism and that we can switch into work mode even when we're in our coziest pajamas. 3, reflecting changes. This observance and others like it reflect broader cultural shifts towards a more relaxed and inclusive approach to work attire. It's all about embracing diversity in how we present ourselves professionally and finding ways to express our personalities while maintaining workplace standards. 4, looking forward. As we move forward, it'll be interesting to see how these trends develop. Will pajamas and casual wear become the new norm, or will traditional attire make a comeback post-pandemic? Only time will tell, but for now, let's enjoy the comfort and freedom these changes bring. 5, engagement encouraged. And to all our listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's episode. Share your thoughts and maybe even a pic of your workday pajama setup. Thanks for tuning in, and let's keep finding ways to make every day at work a little more enjoyable and a lot more comfortable. Tune in tomorrow as we dive into the serene world of haiku poetry, another fantastic way to add a touch of calm to our busy lives. Until then, keep it cozy and keep it creative.
Chad, and now that you mentioned tomorrow's episode, I forgot I was going to ask you to close us off in a way that's a haiku. Man, it would be really impressive if you can do those closing thoughts in the form of a haiku.
Absolutely, Yokai. Let's give those closing thoughts a creative twist with a haiku. Haiku for closing thoughts. Pajamas at work, comfort meets productivity, balance is the key. It's been a cozy chat. Tomorrow, haiku's gentle path. Stay tuned and relax. I hope that captures the spirit of our discussion today in a uniquely poetic way. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to bringing a touch of tranquility and poetry to your morning tomorrow.
All right, Chad, I'm going back to bed. I'm in my PJs.
Sounds like a plan, Yochai. Enjoy the comfort of those PJs and have a great rest. Looking forward to catching up again tomorrow for some poetic insights. Have a good one.